So basically these are the questions. So if you check the site for PTS, you can see that they have not a question set for mobile penetration testing. So in order to overcome this problem, like I said, I will use ChatGPT in this course in order to eager you to learn large language models and use correct programming and stuff. So I asked ChatGPT, like, this is the PTES and what would be a question set for the mobile penetration testing, and I would like to review the answers with you. So how many mobile applications are in the scope? So yeah, how many mobile applications will be conducting a penetration test? So are the apps are like public facing or enterprise internal? So basically, like, it is like a publicly available app or like for a company related app. So sometimes, as you know, companies do some internal apps for themselves in order to use by only their employees and stuff. So it can be an app like that. So will the test bills APK be provided, or should I get from the store if it's in the store? And is there like a multiple versions or builds in this score or scope, or like we will be doing a pen test to a specific scope? So yeah, this is a good question set. And authentication and authorization part, what types of authentication are used, like use username, password, or biometrics, or there's like a single sign-on mechanism and stuff? And how many valid accounts for different roles we will be used? So it can be like there can be some admin account and stuff. And the backend APIs are related with the matter or not, because in most of the cases you will see that the mobile applications will be talking with a backend API, and those backend API are in the scope or not. That can be something you need to consider. And for an app architecture, is the app is hybrid or native? So its app has done with like a Flutter React Native application, or it's written in like the Java or Kotlin, like a native language. So it uses like the app storage, SQLite, keychain and stuff. And does it interact with the hardware? Because based on these questions, you might sometimes try to decide that whether you will emulator or whether you will use a real mobile phone. And for the data protection part, does the app process or store sensitive data? And you need to, like, there are some standards you need to follow when you're doing that, like when you're using some credit card on stuff. And should tester evaluate secure store mechanisms? Like, it can sometimes use keychain and key store. So basically these are mechanisms based on the operating system, and when you're doing the test, should I like test this scope or not? And is offline functionality is scope? So apps can use some caching and local storage mechanisms, and are there in scope or not? Could be talked in the pre-engagement part. So for the API, are the backend API are in scope for direct testing or only via the app? So let's just say you have an API which has 5 endpoints and the app uses the 3 endpoints. So basically, when you're doing the test, whether you will use the 3 endpoints for penetration test, or can I use the 5 endpoints for penetration test? That is something you need to talk about. And is there an API documentation like a Swagger UI or Postman collection available? So this can help our testing process to be better. And so rate limiting tests are concerned. So let's just say there's an app and I can lock accounts. So if it's a critical app, and locking mechanism could be a real high vulnerability. And if it's not that kind of an app, it is not maybe a vulnerability. So this kind of stuff must be talked. And is jailbreak root detection in use, and should bypassing could be attempted? So sometimes the developers implemented the root detection, jailbreaking detection and stuff, and in some cases they give you like two versions of the same application, first one with the root detection and other one with the not root detection. So you can try to bypass root detection in the first one, and if you can't, you can do some testing with the root detection disallowed version. And is reverse engineering permitted? Are testers allowed to test payment gateways and any third-party related SDK vulnerabilities could be reported? And for the compliance, like testing required for specific compliance, if it is, you need to like test based on those compliances. And what is the main business risk of the app? And should MDM or enterprise deployment mechanisms be accessed? So sometimes companies use mobile device management security tools for their employees' phones. So I think this is like a really good testing set. And for a viewer, I suggest you to talk with ChatGPT about it. Like you give the PTES and you can ask questions to it like how can we do that? How can we do those? What is it related? How it's related to mobile penetration testing and stuff. So yeah, I think this is a really good question set, and I'm just trying to make you like a more creative because we need to understand that kind of questions. And also, like I said in the following course, some of the terminology might be like you might be some unfamiliar if you haven't developed any Android application, or if you haven't developed any application, or if you haven't done any penetration testing, or you didn't get any training for based on this. So like I said, don't worry, we will cover everything. However, like I show you this basic terminology, like the basic stuff, basic keywords. So if you see a keyword that you don't understand here, please take a note and let's just say I don't know what SSO means, okay? So I don't know what SSO means. Can you explain? Okay. So yeah, it's an authentication method that's user, yeah, it's a single. So example in daily life, yeah, that's a good actually, and simple. So like I said, if you like problems, if you like, it's not a problem actually, if you don't know the terminology, or maybe you haven't worked or heard them yet, but you can always ask. I mean, you can also Google it, but right now, like I said, this course is in 2025 and we have like the large language models in our life, and I really suggest you to use them in your actually learning in your learning adventure actually. So yeah, and if I continue like the other sections, let me check, sorry. Yeah, so the other concept will be the information gathering, or what we call is also a reconnaissance. So in the reconnaissance, you identify the target first. After you agreed upon like the Android application, let's just say, or a web application and stuff, you try to identify the target first and consider any rules of engagement limitation, consider time length, and end of the goal. Consider end goal of the test. So we have a limit because we are not like a real hacker. We have a limit, like basically. So we start with the OSINT section, which stands for Open Source Intelligence. And open source intelligence gathering is like a concept in cybersecurity that what you do is like you try to get system information. So we'll be covering some of this like basic OSINT techniques for mobile application security. However, like a full OSINT course, I really suggest you to like like I said, check the token and reach out, because we have like some CTI and OSINT experts that we provide that kind of training. However, we will cover some of the basic OSINT in this course and nothing, because it's like another subtopic of cybersecurity. So basically what you do is you can use some passive information gathering techniques. So it's actually, so you try to anonymously search the targets in the internet. So this search can be done with like Google dorking, like you check the application stores and stuff. You might check some like user comments and stuff. And in the semi-passive, you check the targets with normal, like basically normal activities. So basically what you do is you try to download the app into a normal phone, so you don't do some any unnatural activities in order to raise alarm. So you try to not to raise an alarm. And in the active information gathering, you are actually okay, you can attack, you start the attack basically. And so you can like try to map the network infrastructure, or actively enumerate, or you can do some vulnerability scan for open services. You can try to find some directories, files, and servers. So basically this is the scanning part, what we call the active penetration test. And so this is for like other penetration testing activities. Let me check. So there are also some examples how you can find some information. So there are like some techniques for them. You can see some human intelligence also. So like you can try to find key employees and stuff, like the developers of the app and so on. And you can try to find some footprints and port scanning. So this is like a general stuff for PTES. So okay, let's do our thing again. This is PTES for recon. What can be for mobile application? So basically, yeah, this is our methodology for mobile application. Voila. So yeah, we can talk about the target. It is Android, iOS, or hybrid cross-platform versions, and the distribution channel can be found. You can do some OSINT like App Store metadata, developer certificates, third-party SDK, marketing docs, and job openings for like a React and stuff. So you might learn some information about the infrastructure here. And you can, yeah, like I said, try to find some developers and stuff and check their forum accounts and so on. And for an external footprint, you get the package name version and permissions. You try to download binary. So this is like SSL pinning. So this is something you need to do in the testing process. And for a human part, you can actually, yeah, contact the customer support for account recovery logic and stuff. That's a good idea, by the way. And you can like try to like, you can also write the support to get like a test version of the app and stuff. And you try to understand the rate limits API, and does the application have like a jailbreak detection or root detection stuff. So yeah, ChatGPT actually gives us some hints and insights about the second legend get. So if we continue with the threat modeling part, so threat modeling is actually something you need to do about the threats, and in this part you try to like understand the business assets and business process that and find its threats. So actually this is not like a very technical matter. Something you need to do is like understand the business, understand its model, like what could be their target and stuff. So it's like if it's a paying app, so it is a financially related app, needs to be dealt with and stuff. So that would be something you need to consider, and I am just gonna do that. And we start with vulnerability analysis. So they, like I said, they do that for like the network, they do that for the web servers, and so on. However, we can also do that for our mobile application penetration testing process, because like what you do in this network test is also can be applied to a mobile penetration test, because there will be like an API server, API gateway that you can try to enumerate with your port scanner, and there will be some like API server that is vulnerable to basically every web attack. So what can you do in a web application penetration test? You can do it into an API of the mobile app, so it can be an also scope. So for instance, any like a command injection vulnerability can be also found in the mobile app via this API. So these are like also some things you need to consider. And also like if there is a VPN that works with the mobile application, some vulnerability in the VPN can also trigger some another vulnerability in the mobile application. So like I said, also this one is this can be also like a matter we need to consider. So sometimes the big business like the gross business use some VPN tool to work their mobile application, and so the employees use this VPN in order to get mobile application work, and there can be some misflows like flow errors and stuff in this kind of a pen test too. So this is something you need to consider. And other than that, I will like give you much detail in the specific mobile pen test methodology section. However, what you can do like is try to find the exploits that can use in like some of the specific SDKs and third-party libraries. So you can do some vulnerability analysis for them too. And in the exploitation part, what you do is when you find the vulnerability, you try to get the exploit. So sometimes those exploits need some customization. So for instance, let's just say the SQL injection you have found, and like there are some specific forms of SQL injection, and that SQL injection needs some modification in our application. So you actually customize the exploit for your usage. So like I said, this is also done for not basically more like a network or web application pen testing. However, I really suggest you to read this whole document and like do some chatting, do some googling about the mobile application, how it can be implemented. So what you do in the post exploitation, like this is mostly a network level stuff. However, it can also be adapted into a mobile application. So what you do in the post exploitation is like you can try to get some another accounts, you can try to get some accounts, you can try to get some information, you can try to access another like servers and stuff. And for a mobile application, if you like get the first API, for instance, in the post exploitation process, you can try to manipulate the second API if there is, or like you can try to pivot into a second API So this can also, all of them could be a case for our mobile app. And the reporting will be the last section, and I will give you like a detailed reporting section in the lesson 12, I hope. And we will be talking about how should how can we do a good penetration testing report, how should the report structure happen, so how the report structures done. And for that, like I said, we have another section. However, before that section, I really suggest you to check this page out, because like they try to like what is the risk, what is the exposure and stuff. It gives you like the definitions of those, because these are critical when we're doing a penetration test. And like I said, so this is like a basic guideline for the penetration testing, and I really suggest you to read them and check them all in order to like understand the basics of the penetration. So if we come to our course and our detailed security lesson, so like I said, this is the basics, and we are doing, however, it does not